Hello and welcome to episode 69 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Ware. Stephen, it's an absolute pleasure. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Feel free to call me Steve. I'm only Stephen on Sundays if I've done something wrong. But I'm doing.
Okay, so it might be Stephen by the end of the podcast, but it's
Yeah,
still with Steve for now.
yeah.
Amazing. Steve, as always, in your own words, what makes you a man?
Do you know what? I think there's a really deep answer I could give to that question, or a little bit more of a superficial one. I think we should start with the superficial one. Maybe we'll get into the deep one as we talk. I think the biggest thing I've learned as a man, which is kind of how I interpreted that question, is probably that I know nothing. And that sounds like a really stupid thing to say at the start of the podcast, and everyone's now clicked away, everyone's pressing stop. Okay, this one's not going to share anything. But I think I've got to a point in my life where I think that the greatest people in this world, and I'm not putting myself in that category, but there's most to be learned from the people that are humble, that have a lot of humility, and that don't think they know it all and can get out their way enough to keep learning and keep realizing that, do you know what, in the grand scheme of things, I know nothing. There's a very, very famous story going back about this, but that kind of really resonated with me when I read it. That I guess always being open to learning, whether you don't matter if you're a man or a woman, really. But I think that would be the first point I guess I'd make. It's something big that I've learned. It took me a long time to learn it. Right, I had a pretty
Yeah,
big ego when I was younger. I thought I had all the answers. I thought I knew a lot of things. So I had opinions on everything, even if I tried them, even if I hadn't. And I think now I've learned to step back and get out my own way and say, well, do you know what? Let's kind of see. And maybe I'm wrong.
maybe. Well, if that's a superficial answer, this is going to be one hell of a podcast. That's that is for sure. Well, Steve, why don't you tell people what it is that you do and what you are a little bit of an expert in?
Yeah, so I help senior leaders one-to-one or corporate groups with stress reduction. So basically, I burned out IBM. Long story short, a story that spanned many years. I burned out IBM. I was there. I joined when I was a kid in 1992. I was 18, and I did almost 30 years there. But I burned out after about 20, and burnout felt rough, Lewis. It felt, people use the word burnout very freely in the same way that they use the word flu very freely or depression very freely. And if you've experienced any of those three things, you
Yeah,
stop misusing that word. Um, so for me, burnout was horrific sleep. It was high anxiety. It was existing rather than living. It was awful, and I needed something, right? And what I knew, going back to the kind of what makes me a man, what I knew for sure was that I didn't need meditation or mindfulness, because that sounded like BS. That sounded like navel gazing crap. That sounded like not something a tough guy like me should need or admit. Even admitting I needed something was a big enough thing. So anyway, I rejected it. Somebody said to me, "Oh, it's meant to be good. I've read a load of stuff and they're doing it at Google and all that." And I rejected that out of hand and said, "No, no, no. I don't need that. I'm too good for that. I'm too manly for that." So I binned it. But there's one part of my brain that said, "Do you know what? It's been around 2,500 years, and even the Western science now is very compelling." So I got
yeah,
out of my way just enough to try it. It radically changed my life. People at work started to notice, not because I told them, because they noticed it in me. That led me to going off to University of Oxford to learn how to teach mindfulness and business, bring an 8-week course back into IBM, teaching my colleagues because they begged me for help. And it was ridiculously successful and went kind of viral in the company. It was the first and only corporate approved mindfulness program. And it lit a fire in me that had never been there before, Lewis. It was like I discovered something I was truly passionate about, and people could feel it, they could sense it. And so it's my life's work really now. Would I say particularly with men? Yeah, I probably attract more men than the average mindfulness teacher, but I think the average mindfulness teacher is a woman if you look at the stats. So yeah, I love breaking down the barriers. I love breaking down the myths. I love it when people show up to my talks virtually or in person and bring a whole huge bag of rotten tomatoes and chuck them and shout and swear and tell me that this is all BS and it's not going to be for them and da da da. I love all that stuff, because if we can get past it, we can get out of our own way.
yeah.
There's some magic in there. There's some life changing stuff in there, and it will change your life as much as exercise. It will change as much as healthy eating, as dental hygiene, all these pantheon of good things that we do, hopefully daily.
Yeah.
This is one of them, mate. This is a big, big one.
Well, I probably sit in that camp of this is BS. So I do all those other things. I eat healthily. I exercise.
Yeah,
I'm a pretty, like, I would say I look after myself.
yeah,
mainly because I'd been through some shit in my life myself, and that was sort of the other side of it.
Yeah.
So why do you think men think mindfulness is bullshit?
Well, why don't you tell me? Why do you think it's bullshit?
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that there's science and there's Western science in it. I think maybe that's a big thing, right? Is that it's perceived as fluffy, as whiffy, as in you're just, that's why.
Let's dig into it a little bit more, because it's going to be an interesting conversation, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this or watching this and nodding, saying, absolutely, Lewis. Yeah. And I would have been, right? I'm with you on this. So what would you say if I said the words meditation or mindfulness? What would be the first unfiltered, unchanged word that would come into your head? Would it be bullshit? Would it be something else?
It probably wouldn't be bullshit. It'd probably be more like an like a piss take of it almost.
Okay. So just kind of ridiculing it. And what would you think somebody who does practice meditation mindfulness, what would you imagine that the outcomes for that person would be? What would they get from it, do you think?
Well, they obviously get something from it. I wouldn't be able to glean what it would be. They obviously feel it works. I don't know. Like, if you want me to go fully unfiltered, it's probably sort of in the realm of manifestation and crystals. That would probably be the parcel I would put it with.
Oh, okay. Okay, so untangible, impossible to prove things. Okay, perfect. So all I'd say to you is, and we can go into as much detail or as little detail as you want on this call, I would say if you ever want to try it, just see what's true for you, Lewis. Right? Forget. I mean, I don't use crystals or ask you to hug trees or burn incense or do any of that stuff, and you don't need to, right? Not that there's anything particularly wrong with doing that, but I would say just try it and see what's true for you, right? In the same way, and it's easy to rubbish anything. Let's pick fitness as an analogy that I could rubbish. Yeah. So you just said to me, you look after yourself, you do a bit of fitness, right? Let's say I was morbidly obese. I'm sat here. And let's pretend I'm massively overweight. I'm 30 stone. It hurts to move almost. And you say to me, Steve, exercise is amazing. Look at all these scientific papers proving it. It's great for me. And I go, oh, okay. I'll tell you what I do. Well, I can't run because I'm kind of incapacitated in that sense, but I will walk around the block because you're telling me walking's great for me, right? And what does it do? Well, exercise makes you feel better. It makes you lose weight. It makes you mentally sharper, all these good things, right? So I walk around the block and I come back and I'm knackered and my joints are fucked because the weight is killing me.
Yeah.
And I get on the scales and I've not lost a single pound. I feel worse than when I went. And I ring you up and go, Lewis, what are you talking about? That was awful. That was crap. And I feel worse.
Yeah.
I feel worse. So please don't tell me exercise works. Please don't tell me it's going to be good for me. Please don't tell me I'll lose weight or feel better, because I've just done it and it's a load of shit. And if people, and of course we all know what comes next after that, right? Because if you give people an analogy they can understand, like fitness, they go, well, yeah, but of course you're not going to get fit from doing it once, or just, you have a long, long way to go probably before you felt great. But do you know what? It is possible. And why is it possible? Because millions and billions of other people have done it. So I would just put mindfulness in that camp, right? If you ever get to the point where this resonates enough with you that you think, do I want to try this? Find a great teacher, find a great app, find a great book, try it, give it some time, give it 8 weeks, I'd ask you to give it, and then look back and see. So you'd be your own laboratory, Lewis. Forget the stuff from Harvard and Oxford and everywhere else. Forget the peer-reviewed double-blind studies, right? As brilliant as they are. Forget all that, because none of it matters. The only things that would matter would be would it change your life? How would it change your life? And how would you feel?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say it like that, because you said you dismissed it yourself and then you went on your own journey with it.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? Like, was it just a case of it kept popping up, or like, how did it keep coming round to the point where you were like, yeah, okay, I'm going to try this? Because there'll be other people that are like, yeah, give it 8 weeks, whatever. But they'll hear this podcast and then in 2 weeks they might see it again. Like, so explain that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that in one word: suffering. I'll expand on it a little bit, right? So suffering. So I probably struggled the first bit in my early 20s. And there was nothing kind of formally diagnosed other than sort of bit of anxiety and depression. They gave me medication for that.
Yeah.
Which I took, which kind of, people that have never had any experience with that, for me, the experience wasn't, a lot of people think, if you go to the doctor and you say, I'm not feeling great, and they say, well, well, how depressed are you? And they'll say, well, how happy do you want to be, Lewis? And if you take 1 a day, you're going to be pretty happy. Take 5 a day, you're going to be you'll be bouncing off the walls, mate. You're going to be the most brilliant person to be around. You'll be so happy. Of course, that's not the case. So what this medication does, it kind of numbs your experience. It takes away the highs and takes away the lows really good. So for me, that wasn't a particularly great experience. I didn't have a big problem with it, but it wasn't a great experience. I spent a lot of time using talking therapies. So by the time I got to this, I thought, well, I've tried a few other things. What else is there? And I think, and I was suffering enough. The answer to the question was suffering, right? If you're dreading bedtime every time you get in your bed because you know you're just going to be tossing and turning, your mind's going to never switch off, and it's torturing you. You are going to do anything, and you will try something for 8 weeks because the suffering's got so big. I only work with people who suffer, people who have grown up and mummy and daddy have given them a beautiful trust fund. They've never done a day's work in their life. They don't know what it is to lose sleep or feel fearful, and they go to Vegas, 5 times a year. They don't come on my course yet. They may when they realise that all the money in the world won't make you feel peaceful if you're not feeling peaceful.
Yeah. What's your opinion on, you've mentioned it briefly, the terminology and using that, and you mentioned suffering. It's almost like it sounded like it was last resort. Is that fair to say? Like it was a bit like, I've literally tried everything. There's
definitely nothing else to lose. Nothing to lose. Yeah.
So you've obviously come from that place. You've taken medication. I know that you refer to your practice as a drug-free Xanax, and that it's a sort of way that you can.
That's a kind of playful headline, but
yeah. But let's go back, because you say those people that you don't deal with and the people that you do deal with. Like, what's your views on the terminology around mental health, well-being, burnout? Like, are they being used too much as buzzwords, or is it good that they're being used and it's bringing light to this topic?
A bit of both, I think. I think it's brilliant that people are talking about it. I think it's brilliant that big, physically strong, macho men are talking about it. Tyson Fury talks about his struggles. You won't find many bigger, tougher men. You put most men in a ring with him, there's very few people that will come out on top. So because us men, we tend to associate kind of mental strength with physical strength sometimes, don't we? So we see someone like him, and he's a multi-millionaire, and why the hell would he suffer his mental health? He's one of the toughest guys on the planet, adored by lots of people. He's a VIP wherever he goes, and he's set for life. He's got nothing to worry about. What's his problem? Why is he such a big girl's blousing when it comes to his mental health? So you can throw all this stuff. So when a big guy like him stands up and says, "Do you know what? I struggle sometimes," I think that's extremely powerful. I think that's extremely helpful, especially for young boys or men, to look at someone like him and go, "Do you know what? Wow. Well, if I was in his position, I don't think I'd say that, because it would make me seem weak and everything else." So I think that side of it is really, really helpful. But I think there's a lot of talk. People don't know how to look after their mental health, and words get misused, and words have connotations, right? The reason I asked you right at the start of this, can you tell me the one word you think when you hear that? Yeah. And I've done that with loads of other people. And a lot of the time, especially for men, it is the word that comes up is like, and so I want to help people get past that, right? Because once you move beyond that, so I've said to people, forget the labels, and none of that's important. Doesn't matter whether you call it mindfulness or presence, awareness, or custard. It's just a label.
Yeah.
It's just a label. There's 2 types of knowing in this world, Lewis. One, conceptual knowing. I can teach you facts. Mindfulness is this. You could learn a definition.
Yeah.
But one of the analogies that people use is honey, right? You could do a PhD in honey. You could study how it comes about, how it's produced, the molecular structure of it. You could do a PhD in the bloody thing. You don't know what honey is till you tasted it. You don't know what it is until it's become you, so to speak, because you've eaten it.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between the experiential knowing, the PhD, and the conceptual knowing, eating the honey. I want people to eat the honey, so to speak. I want you to try mindfulness and see what's true for you. Forget the books, forget everything else. You may need the books to kind of point you in that direction, but the signpost to Rome isn't Rome, is it? You got to actually kind of get there and see.
Do you think people like Tyson Fury, and there's obviously an array of athletes and actors that have come out that, like you say, are physically strong or fit, or they have wealth, and their life in retrospect looks amazing, and it's like you would clip your fingers and swap straight away.
Yeah.
Do you think stuff like that and then them coming out really does show that mental health isn't maybe it's like I've used this analogy before, and maybe the more that I sort of work in this space and the more that I deal with it, maybe this isn't true, but I feel that being in a healthy position and looking after your body creates a byproduct which is good mental health. But do you think that that's not a true statement?
No, I think that's a true statement again to a point. I think the mind and body are totally inseparable. I think even mainstream medicine would agree with you on that. There's no separation between the mind and body. Your body, for example, doesn't know the difference between a real disaster and a thought of disaster. It will react in exactly the same way. Everyone can see if that's true in their experience. If I lie awake in bed tonight worrying about potentially losing my job, my body will flood with the same chemicals and have the same reaction if I'm lying in bed thinking, shit, I lost my job. So there is no difference in the thought of disaster or real disaster to our bodies. So our minds have a huge, and it's kind of two-way thing. So yeah, I think they're completely inseparably linked. I think if you look after your body, it will help your mind. But will it be enough? It wasn't for me, mate. I was running and playing basketball and eating healthy and not boozing, not smoking, da da da. But that wasn't enough. I needed something else. I needed to actually. Whereas that was kind of a focus on the body and then some beautiful side effects for the mind, so to speak.
Yeah.
I also wanted something like a focus on the mind, there'd be beautiful side effects in the body, if that makes sense. If you bring those two things together, that's perfect, I think.
Yeah. I'm sort of in this space right now, and it's like I do all those things, and you almost have like that runner's high, or the juiciness of a pineapple, like that makes you feel, you get some endorphins from that. But as soon as that sort of wears off, in inverted commas, there's still 24 hours in the day, right? And you're gonna have thoughts, and you're gonna think about things, especially when you're doing things and trying to accelerate things and grow a business, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like all these thoughts sort of come in.
Yeah.
So is that why you see such success with it in the corporate space? Because let's be sort of, I guess, a little bit brutally honest, they're going to have a lot on their plate, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is what I was curious about, right? Because I'd only ever worked in IBM. Like I said, I joined when I was 18. So it was the only thing I knew. And I thought when I went off to Oxford University, they sort of said, what are you doing here? And I knew they were very strong clinically and academically. So mindfulness had been proven and approved by the National Institute of Clinical Excellence and prescribed in the NHS by then. So we knew, there was no discussion or debate really around does it work, does it not work. We knew it did. But people weren't particularly using it in business. And I thought this is the only use case I can really test it in with authority, because I know what it's like to work for IBM for decades and be under a lot of stress and be in a company that needs its pound of flesh and is very demanding. Everything's got to be bigger, better, faster, quarter on quarter. So I was fascinated by that, but I was fascinated because it's a unique challenge, Lewis, to think, can we take something that's used clinically and academically to a point, and can we lift it and put it in a very fast-paced, very competitive, cutthroat global enterprise? Can we do that? Are people going to, is it going to be secular enough? Is it going to be mainstream enough? Are people going to actually turn up and practice? Are they going to enjoy it? Is this going to turn into an actual habit they can keep? Like, does it even fit in business? So these are all the questions I went to Oxford to answer, really. And of course, the only way of answering it was to learn a great program, a brilliant program, and take it back in IBM and pilot it and see what happens.
There's obviously a big push for work-life balance in like organizations. It's like a buzzword that they use. It seems to be more common in up-and-coming generations, Gen Z, and I imagine Gen Alpha will start to push that a little bit more. Do you think mindfulness is a way to create work-life balance, but also still have that ability to push and succeed and grow in your career?
For sure. Yeah. And just look at the examples of people that bring these two things together. I used to have a slide when I presented at IBM with people like this on there, actually, because it's a very common question. And you look at wildly successful people like Oprah Winfrey, who's got a practice. You look at, some of the best business brains and some of the most successful people on their planet. And some people will attribute it. There's Salesforce, I think, what's his name? Is it Benioff, the Salesforce chief? There's a guy, Ray Dalio, who's in charge of the world's largest hedge fund, who says, I attribute all my greatness really in some sense to my mindfulness practice. So to imagine, because that was one of the fears I had. I thought, if I get too good at this, Lewis, I'm going to just turn into this passive blob, right? It just sits in the corner, it does nothing. And they'd be like, Steve, you've got that project to deliver. I'd be like, nah, whatever. I'm just moving on. So, this is about having a laser focused attention. This is about having an ability to make the right decision under pressure.
Yeah.
There's so many business skills, right? There's a great book by a lady called Dr. Amisha Jha, University of Miami. And she set out to find out, why do some people's brains crumble in pressure? And why do some people have the sharpness to make the right decision? And she found that literally people's brains were going offline when under the most intense pressure, right? So if your amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze, is triggered heavily, one of the messages it sends is to your prefrontal cortex to say, shut down, don't need this yet, don't need you now. We go into sort of survival mode. But the prefrontal cortex is used for sort of reasoning and decision making. So one of the brilliant things she spoke about in the book, that was a brutal example, was there's a guy in Afghanistan, right? So it's one of the worst incidents in recent friendly fire history for the US. There's a guy and he's got a GPS device, and he knows he's got to put the coordinates in to drop it on the enemy. He's about to press the button. He sees the battery low message come up. He knows, because he's been through it 1,000 times in training, if you change the batteries in this GPS device, it resets the coordinates to your base location. And you know what's coming next. He changes the batteries and he pushes the button. He kills a load of US troops. Now, he wasn't being slapdashed. He wasn't being half-assed. He wasn't on his phone to his mates and then going, oh, I need to press this button. He was 100%, what he thought was 100% locked in, but he'd lost access to that part of his brain. Let's take that into the boardroom. Why are some people in the boardroom able to make the right decision? Why are some people, at any level in business, but it gets more serious because there's more money kind of the higher up you go. So these are very tangible things. These are very well, I was going to say they're very measurable things. That some of it's fairly hard to measure in the same way that, Lewis, how much money are you going to save the NHS in the next 20 years if you keep yourself healthy? We don't know.
Yeah.
But probably at least something, right? And it can be a tricky-ish thing to measure. Some businesses have measured it and have put actual figures on it, and Deloitte have put an ROI of 500% on a proactive, good mindfulness program. But this is real world stuff, right? This is if mindfulness can't help you in your life right now, no matter what job you're doing, no matter where you are, your life situation, your financial situation, your health situation, if it can't help you right now, let's forget it.
It's really funny because it's like, just to go typical back to the whole man thing, and people that are listening, they're probably like, yeah, I'm like hyper successful. I want to be successful. I want to have it all. I want to do this. Try this. No, I'm not doing that. Like, there's still, and it's so interesting that you list all those people that have made successes and attribute it to mindfulness, but then also the worst case scenario of when you're essentially shutting down and going into fight and flight. Because so many men, I think it's some crazy stat that, like, if they said who can fly the plane, it's like 80% of men think that they could successfully land a plane under the pressure of the fact that the pilot's incapacitated. So there's blind confidence, but in reality,
very misplaced.
It's sort of, I imagine a lot of people shut down. Is that the official definition of burnout, like that sort of stopping making decisions, or is that?
I think it's one of the side effects of it. Fuzzy thinking and lack of sleep. There's loads of stuff that goes into it. But one thing's for sure, Lewis, nobody's going to listen to this podcast and hear me say some of the greatest leaders in the world, some of the most rich people, successful people use mindfulness, and then sign up to mindfulness and go and do it. They're just not. They may start to read one article on it. They may download Headspace and use it twice. Most of them will stop almost immediately.
Do you think that is there other ways to be mindful?
I think everyone's being mindful already in their life, right? So this may be a useful thing for your listeners. I'd say to you and everybody listening right now, think of one moment in your life, could have been yesterday when you were 5 years old, doesn't matter. But one moment in your life where you either felt very peaceful. So, sometimes you just got those moments in your life and they're quite memorable. You'd be able to remember it now, where you just think, oh, geez, the weight of the world just lifted. Heaven. Maybe it was last summer and you're on a holiday, you're lying on the beach somewhere, if that's your thing. Maybe you're skiing down a mountain doing something quite high energy. Don't need to be sitting, relaxing.
Yeah.
Maybe you were stroking your dog this morning for 2 seconds and your eyes met and she wagged her tail. And for 3 seconds, you forgot all your problems just for 3 seconds. And I'd ask people to just think of one moment where they felt peaceful, joyful, like the weight of the world lifted. Maybe you noticed beauty in something. Maybe you noticed the sun setting and just for a moment you just went, ah. Now, I'd ask if hopefully everyone can pick at least one of those moments in their life. And I'd then say to them, zoom all the way in really, really closely to that maybe a nanosecond where you felt that peace, that stillness, that intensiveness, that joy. And I'd ask them, and I'd ask you right now, how much thinking were you doing, Lewis, during that second of peace?
Well, yeah, none. It
None.
was, yeah.
Okay. So here's the key, right? This could have been a very short podcast. You could have asked me that as the first question. I could have said, Lewis, the key to life is to not thinking. Because
Okay.
every time the incessant stream of noise in your head shuts the hell up, that's when you feel peace. That's when you feel joy. That's when you feel beautifully alive. That's when you notice beauty. These are all some of the most beautiful moments we ever have as human beings. But they all coincide with the thinking mind being still. If and if there's macho guys listening to this, they may like to know about what's flow state. Everybody knows what flow state is, right? In high performance sports, people, men and women,
Yeah.
if they get into a flow state, that's a state of no thinking. Top class footballers are not thinking when they're playing football. You start thinking on a football pitch, that ball is gone. You start thinking when you're skiing down a mountain at God knows what miles an hour, you're falling over. The chance of you, if you're riding a bike 150 miles an hour and you start thinking, daydreaming, chance of you falling off and dying go up massively. So we force ourselves into this. The reason tortured athletes like Paul Merson, Paul Gascoigne, Tony Adams, the reason they'll all say to you, the one moment in my life, Steve, when I don't feel stressed, when I don't want to put a bet on or have a drink or is when I'm playing football. Why? Because they're not thinking. The mind can't torture them there. So there's an absence of thought, right? So if I want people to take one thing from this podcast, notice that when your mind stops in your life, beautiful things happen. The problem with that, Lewis, is you can't stop your mind by trying hard to stop your mind. And I'd invite people to try that.
Yeah, no, I was trying it.
Okay. Sometimes I literally say to people, let's take 10, 20 seconds. Just don't think a single thought. And unless people have been shown how to do that, you can't stop your mind. So then you have to learn ways of working with your mind and allowing it to come to a gentle place of stillness by itself rather than trying to wrestle it to the ground and hold the bloody thing down.
Yeah.
And when you learn that, that's a beautiful thing. But that is mindfulness, right? So people leave this podcast with a definition of mindfulness. Mindfulness was you cuddling your dog for 3 seconds this morning. Mindfulness was you playing football the other day and forgetting your problems just for however many minutes you played. Mindfulness was lying in the hammock on the beach and just feeling the sun on your face and hearing the tide coming in and out, smelling the sun cream. Mindfulness was having that sip of really expensive wine that you treated yourself to and really being there for it. That's mindfulness. It's not some bullshit abstract concept that you can't relate to. It's some of the best moments in your life.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Like, how can you not try it if you refer to it as that, as being the nice parts of your life?
Yeah, so you're already doing it. So most people want more of that, right? Because most people, and some people say to me, Steve, running's my mindfulness. When I go out running, I don't think about anything. I'm just running and I feel the wind and I feel the feet on the floor and blah, blah. And that's great. That's perfect. Keep doing that. But for me, it wasn't enough, right? Because at 3 o'clock in the morning, if I can't sleep, there's no point putting my running gear on. It's not practical.
Well, so you mentioned a thing which I want to touch on, which was gambling and drugs, and then also like being present. So we look at like social media, or you see these like memes on social media of people who are all at an event taking pictures and videos rather than, and then there's like an old woman that's enjoying it, and it's like, be the old woman.
Yeah.
But then you mentioned drugs and gambling.
Yeah.
Do you think that we are seeking mindfulness, and if we can't find it, we have to try and find it in another way? And for some men and people, that's through those vices.
100%. Just look around you. Just see, again, let's forget any abstraction here. Let's forget me telling you anything. Just look around you. Look at, first of all, notice how much people are lost in thought. Look around you in the street. Most people are walking around like, you can almost see them, I'm exaggerating a little bit, you almost see them sort of going, there's a narrative, there's a monologue or a dialogue going on in their head, right? Or they've got this in front of them and their head's buried in that. Everyone's trying to get out their own mind all the time, whether they smoke something, whether they drink something. If I drink enough whiskeys, I'll probably stop thinking.
Yeah.
Just before I fall off the chair, probably. But so there are healthy ways and unhealthy ways of stopping the mind. And the difference is, Lewis, the unhealthy ways take you below thought.
Yeah.
Kind of anesthetize yourself to life. Mindfulness will rise above it. So you'll be sharper, you'll be more focused. You won't be lost in that thinking realm, and that'd be a beautiful step away from it, but you rise above it, you don't fall below it and sedate yourself.
It's really interesting because I'm sort of going through it myself. So I stopped drinking, it's about 7 months now, and I was never a big drinker anyway, but I fully cut it out. And I stopped watching porn, mainly for an experiment because of statistics, and I wanted to understand what that would do. And then I'm eating healthy. I occasionally binge on sweets and chocolate, but the majority of the time I'm eating healthy. I was literally having this conversation with my brother the other day. We went for a walk, and I was like, to be honest with you, I'm feeling pretty anxious at the moment, and it's because I genuinely think I've cut everything out of my life and nothing's replaced it yet. Like I've just like no porn, no booze, healthy eating, low screen time. Like I'm just going through life like
Right. So
no.
where's the dopamine? Where's the pleasure? Is that what you're saying?
I think like because you're so used to it being
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
like a withdrawal from.
Right. Well, it is really. I mean, the biggest addiction in the world, I think, now is a smartphone.
Yeah,
Who's not addicted to their smartphone? Who? And what's your definition of addiction? Probably wanting to use it less and finding it really hard to do that. I think most people would say fair enough on that. I would.
yeah. So it's interesting that we're talking about this as I'm sort of going through it and I'm
Yeah.
now trying to
Let me
find
ask you a
people.
question. Let me ask you a question. And I thought about posting this on LinkedIn the other day. What's a better feeling for you, Lewis? A feeling of deep peace or a feeling of, or like a dopamine high, like an excited, I'm in Vegas gambling, this excited. Which would you prefer? If you could only have one or the other, if you could live the rest of your life in either a deeply peaceful state or that kind of highly excitable state, what would you pick?
It's a really interesting question. I think that's a really tough question. I think if you asked that earlier, it might have been that dopamine high. But I think because I've gone through 3+ years of trying to detach and rebuild myself essentially into the best version that I can with the tools that I have to me without turning into a monk,
Yeah.
is probably that deep peace now. It probably genuinely would be that. I to be honest with you, I could probably count on my left hand how many times I've felt deep peace in the last, I don't know, 5 years, let's say. Let's go with
Right.
that as a, yeah, like,
Right.
um, so it's, yeah, I think now it would definitely be that.
Interesting. So that's a good answer. I would agree with you. I think the younger me would pick the Vegas lights.
Yeah,
There's no better feeling than deeply peaceful for me because if you feel deeply at peace, you don't need the Vegas lights. You don't need, and there's nothing wrong with them. Like, and if you want to, if you want to have them. But the people I look at who are the most peaceful people on the planet, there's an underlying sense of contentment. It's not happiness because happiness is a fleeting thing, right? It's a
yeah,
contentment, and they're kind of okay with whatever's happening on the surface. You could draw an analogy with the ocean, right? In the depths of the ocean, there's a vast stillness. If you go down enough,
yeah,
on the surface of the ocean, there's tides, there's ripples, there's waves. But underneath that, if you can touch a depth, there's a real beautiful stillness. And the other sort of deeply wise thing that's true for me is the peace that's in you, Lewis, is already there. It's just covered up. You
yeah,
don't need to go somewhere else to find it. You don't need to discover it. It's already in you. What's it covered up by? The incessant noise-making machine in the head. What's it covered up by? The stimulation of your phone. The
yeah,
dopamine hits. The world, which isn't designed to offer you peace, is designed to get your attention because that's where your wallet ends, and follows quickly after. So I think that's quite reassuring. So many people are seeking peace externally. If I can just get this car, if I can just get this designer gear, if I get the 50 grand watch, if I get the, and then they wonder, Jim Carrey's a great example of this. Earned millions and millions and millions of dollars at every house he wanted. He's a VIP wherever he went, could buy anything, go anywhere. And he wasn't at peace at all. And he discovered that peace is beyond the external trappings of that, and is that the peace was inside him. And if once he kind of uncovered that, it made a radical shift in his life.
yes. I'm starting to come to terms with that a lot more. So I used to work in finance. That was my original job. So
Yeah,
the whole keeping score is got a pound sign in front of it. It literally
yeah,
is the name of the game.
yeah,
Um, and I did very well at it. And I enjoyed it at parts, but now it's just a case of, I guess, just redefining that. I don't think it's a case of like, we still live in a capitalist society. I think that's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
important. Like I say, the best I can do without becoming a monk is probably,
Yeah, and it's not about punishing yourself. It's not about. I try to bring this in when I teach. Right, mindfulness can't be an onerous chore. It can't. It can't be. It can't be like the horrible gym workout you just want to get done so you can live the rest of your life. We've got to find ways of seamlessly integrating this whilst you're living your life. So it's going to be not about doing different things, about doing things differently. And it's going to be about having some fun with it. And it's going to be about, it bringing you nice moments. It's not the sort of Zen master sit meditating in a cold room facing the wall. And if you fall asleep, I come over and hit you with a stick. Which is literally what some of the monks do. But for me, there's much more playfulness with it. There's much more fun with it. There's much more beauty around finding stillness and improving your mental health. And having fun while you do it. Because it's going to be hard as it is, right? Let's not sugarcoat it. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be tough, like life is. It reflects life in many ways. Not every meditation feels good. Sometimes you sit and you've got a lot of fear, a lot of sadness, or a lot of anger, or something else. Nobody really wants to sit with that. But that's really where the deeper learning comes from as well.
Well, I think that's another thing that's really important to say, and I think you'll echo this, that taking care of your mental health or going to the gym or eating well or being mindful doesn't mean you're happy all the time, and it doesn't mean that you can just float through life. And if you're content, you still don't get pissed off at things. Like life still happens for sure, right?
Yeah, unless you're enlightened, unless you're among the very few beings on this planet who are truly enlightened.
Yeah.
And I think we could probably count them on your left hand as well. There's only one that I've ever kind of discovered, I think, a guy called Eckhart Tolle. Some people may have heard of him, wrote a book called The Power of Now. But yeah, for us mere mortals, absolutely. It's going to be a lifelong journey. It's in the same way that you don't stop brushing your teeth or eating healthily. This will be a practice that you need to work at forever. So do you want to do it? How do you do it? How can you make it something that you can fit into your day? How can you do it for long enough so that you start to feel the benefit, all this kind of stuff? These are the big questions.
You mentioned having fun with it. Why don't you give some examples that someone that's listening might want to try, or like a 101 initial class to starting mindfulness?
I think you can start at the most basic level, because one of the biggest problems people say to me, I don't have time to do it. I'd love to do it. And everyone wants the outcomes of meditation, but nobody wants to do the meditation. So one way around that, and I use this with some of the really busy execs I work with, and it's about not doing different things in your life. It's about doing the things you're already doing differently. So what does that mean? Well, let me show you a real quick trick, Lewis. Earlier we said that some of the greatest moments in your life was in your mind still. And then we said, but we can't quiet our minds by trying to quiet our minds.
Yeah.
If I asked you right now, and don't try and quiet your mind, don't have to try and feel peaceful, don't have to achieve anything. There's no pressure to do anything here. Don't even need to close your eyes or sit up straight. But just next time you breathe in, can you really pay so much attention to your nostrils? Place all your attention here, right at the tip of the nostrils. So as you're breathing in, I want you to sense the breath just coming in and out. Really feel it, mate. Really feel it come in, and then really feel it go out. So for me, I'll commentate out loud. You don't have to commentate in your head, but I'll just commentate out and give people the idea. So as I breathe in now, I can feel cool air right at the tip of the nostrils. If I stay there with my attention, it requires a lot of focus. But if I stay there for the full in-breath and out-breath, as it turns into an out-breath, it turns into slightly warmer air. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
Does that feel like an okay thing to do? Does it make you feel stressed? Noticing your breathing, is it a pleasant, unpleasant, neutral thing?
Yeah, well, cool then warm. It's not
cool then warm, okay. But let me ask you the more important question than that. This guy Eckhart Tolle that I talked about, he says, as human beings, if we focus all of our attention on the sensation of breathing entering and leaving our body, you can't think and do that thing. You can't think and be fully aware of the sensation of the breath entering and leaving your body.
Yeah.
You're doing one or the other. This is a massive thing. I can tell from your excited face. This is a revelation, right?
Yeah.
What have I just shown you? I've shown you one way of quieting your mind. People say, I can't quiet my mind. My mind keeps me awake all night, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, we just were able to quiet your mind for 1 second. As you breathed in and breathed out and noticed the fact that you were breathing. If you ask yourself that seemingly silly sounding question, am I breathing right now? And you didn't answer that question with your mind, but you placed your attention on your breath and you felt it. Am I breathing right now? Then you answer it, yeah, I can sense it, right? Your mind stopped. So if you did that every time you pulled up at a red traffic light stops your car, it can stop your mind, or it can invite you to allow your mind to stop. If you did that, the compound effect of that can be massive, Lewis, right? Because I can now hear all the cynical blokes shouting at this podcast going, big fucking deal. I'll stop my mind for half a second. Guess what? It didn't complete my inbox. It didn't get the project finished. All it did was I noticed my breath. It's nothing. It's a waste of time. Okay. In the same way that you smoking one cigarette right now will do nothing to negatively affect your health, and we won't be able to measure it in any way possible. If you smoked a cigarette on the hour every hour for the next 5-10 years, what's going to happen? Chance of you suffering some ill health as a result of that go up massively. May not. Chances are probably will.
Yeah.
Same with mindfulness. If you do one mindful thing and look at it in isolation and ridicule it and rubbish it, then it will do nothing. If you do it enough, the compound effect is massive. So I need to work with people, as I was saying 8 weeks earlier. I need to work with people for long enough so that we start to do this stuff and we don't expect anything. We don't expect any results. We don't expect anything to happen. We just do it, as our friends at Nike say. And then after 8 weeks, we come back and say, what's changed? And people go, shit, my resting heart rate's down. I'm sleeping a bit better. I'm not shouting at the missus. I'm a better listener. I think I'm able to focus more at work. My relationship with my kids is better. When I'm out walking the dog, I actually notice the sun on my face now. I've stopped biting my nails. Whatever it is. And these little things are huge things, because guess what? Everyone's life is made up of tiny moments. Nobody's life is made up of 50 grand pay rises and trips to Vegas all week, every week.
Yeah.
You know, those little moments, the moments you're going to miss the most when they stop happening. There's a great quote from a lady called Brené Brown. I'll paraphrase it. And she says something like, I get so busy chasing the extraordinary moments that I miss the ordinary moments, the moments I've missed the most.
Yeah.
My dog giving me a little cuddle in the morning, noticing the sound of the rain on the windows. Those are the ones on your deathbed you'll think, shit, those are the good times.
Yeah, that's good. It's I was going to ask you if you feel that mindfulness needs you to remove things before you do it, but I think you answered that anyway. So, for example, reducing your screen time or stop drinking or doing X, Y, and Z. But it's you don't.
Yeah, I don't tell anyone what to do. I don't tell them how to live their lives. I just invite them to bring more mindfulness into it, and let's see what happens. If it does mean you booze less, great. I would never say to someone, stop drinking and come on my course.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. It's definitely food for thought. I've enjoyed it. It's been enlightening, shall we say, nonetheless. But Steve, we always end with this question, and hopefully you can maybe point some people in the starting points for mindfulness as well. But in regards to the men's space as a whole, what is it that you are liking, and what do you want to see more of?
Yeah, kind of a biased answer. I'd love to see more men have more access to looking after their mental health and having different ways of doing it. And even within that, right? If we talk about mindfulness specifically, which is well my area, when you come on a mindfulness course, if you learn from someone good, they'll show you that there's loads of different doorways into the same room here. I asked you if you like following your breath. If somebody said, I don't like it, it makes me feel anxious, I don't like it. Okay, we can use the body, we can use sound, there's loads of other things that we can do. So it's finding ways for men to be able to improve their mental health in ways that work for them. Fitness is the analogy. You know, you talk about running earlier. Someone else may love it, cycling, swimming, playing rugby, whatever it is, right? Find the thing that works for you and explore that. And I think if we can make that more accessible to men, because no one shows them how to do it. Nobody says it's okay to do it. Nobody admits. You know, we use words like admit. You know, I suffer with depression. I admit that. If we can drop all that language and just say, do you know what? We're just blokes. Jesus Christ. That's it. We're flawed human beings like everybody else on this planet. We need help with stuff. We've got the same crazy mind as everybody else. And if we can have some way of working with it and quietening it and living our lives in harmony with it, everything's better.
Awesome. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. I genuinely could talk to you for hours. I think you're
Thank you.
an extremely interesting guy. If people want to find more and they want to get in touch with you, let them know where the best place to reach you is, and I'll leave the final thoughts with yourself.
Okay. So, my final thought would be if anything has resonated, well, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Steve Ware. If you search kind of Steve Ware Mindfulness, my website is stevewaremindfulness.com. Those are 2 places you'll find me. My final thought would be if anything has resonated with you, the listener, I'm talking to kind of all individually here. If anything's resonated with you that I've said on this call, I'd really encourage you to just experiment with it a little bit, right? You don't have to come to me and get anything. Download an app you like the look of. Buy a book you like the look of. There's a great one called Finding Peace in a Frantic World by Mark Williams, who used to be a professor at Oxford University. Find a book, just scratch that itch, right? Don't believe your mind when it says, it won't work for me. It's no good for me. I don't need this. I should be better than this. I should be tougher than this. Don't believe your mind when it says that. Try and get out of your own way just enough to try it. That's the most beautiful thing I think people can take from this. If something I've said has resonated, then they're sitting up and there's a part of them that's listening to this going, yeah, there seems to be a truth in that. There seems to be a deep truth in that. I can't maybe even explain it through my mind, but there seems to be something deeper that's resonating with this. Follow it in whichever way feels right for you and see what happens.